Good evening. It's Saturday, and Saturday topics are defining your philosophy. And with defining your philosophy, we're starting with the most pertinent question to everyone: what is the purpose or what is the meaning of life? And with that, I'm using a different approach. In the other videos, I normally go about explaining or giving the answer to saying how to do this or how to do that or what you should do and how to compare and contrast. With this, I'm going to use a more open form type of presentation where I discuss the how would I say the analytical point of view and how to break down and deduce the answer for yourself, because your answer and my answer are going to be very different. There may be overlapping components, but this question and most philosophical questions should be distinct to you and distinct to me. If they are the same, that's great on other topics, but for something like this, it should be a very personal type of answer. And most philosophical questions that you ask yourself should be personalized to how you want to go about it, not what other people tell you it should be or what you agree with within other people. Everything that's with you should be unique with these questions. So, with that in mind, I'm not looking at telling you the answer here. I'm going to go ahead and break it down. So, let's start with what we know. What is the meaning of life? Well, we know that life as a component or as a objective from an objective point of view is limited time on earth. For now it's earth. I don't know what it's going to be in 100 years, but limited time on earth. Okay. So we're stuck in this paradigm of time. Time is, yes, a construct, but time is also a reality. So time is a construct because there's not really 24 hours in the day. Certain places have the sun up all day. Certain places have the sun up half the day. Certain places have the sun 3/4 of the day up, right? Well, that really came off weird. But anyways, yes, the sun is not going to be a determinant of how much time there is. Yes, we live in a 24-hour clock to standardize everything for everyone, but the only thing we know for sure is that we have one constraint for time or one structure to time, and that is you are born and you're going to die. You have limited time, but for the purpose of obviously us and for everyone to function cohesively, we need a 24-hour clock, and we need to look at it in terms of years, months, dates, decades, centuries, right? So using that point of view, we may normally have about 180 to 100 years to live. That may extend, that may reduce. Who knows how the world's going to turn out with this current trajectory, looking at it to continue, right? So let's say you have 80 years to live, right? We know that we're going to be born at 0, we're going to live till 80, or born 9 months in and live to 80. So we have limited time here. We also know that what we experienced yesterday we will not experience tomorrow. Yes, we can have the similar experience, but we cannot have the exact same one. Thus, we live in fleeting moments. So that's a for sure. The next is, what do we do with this time, right? What is the point of the time that we have? So, obviously, we have to look at the objective and the subjective, right? The objective is because we are living in a limited amount of time and nothing is repeating, we also have this inclination as animals, as beings, to stay alive for the determined period of time, right? You're going to naturally or personally, whoever you are, may want to naturally die of natural causes rather than wanting to die prematurely or by accident or by murder, whatever it may be, right? So humans have the preset condition that we want to, and animals, preset condition that we want to die of natural causes. So that's clear. So thus we want to meet the primal needs that we have. Those primal needs are eating, sleeping, procreating, if that's still, that's subjective. Let's leave that out. So procreating is, it's changing. People don't want kids, people do want kids. That's just a thing, that's animals. So let's move that apart. We just have eating, sleeping, and shelter, and then a couple other things that are needed, but like hydrating and using the washroom. But other than that, that's our kind of our need, right? Our body needs to stay as a functioning organism, and we're trying to stay alive, so we have to meet those needs. We objectively, all as human beings, have that requirement. Okay, so we know that for sure. So that's one kind of defined meaning. And then we could say, okay, that could be a meaning of life, is just to stay alive. But then it's like, what kind of life is that? Because then, like, obviously, you can determine how long you want to stay alive for up to the point of your limit, and it's kind of like there's more to it, obviously, because just living like that, well then, like, I obviously feel happy sometimes, sad sometimes, so that has should have something to do with it, right? So then we get into subjective, and with subjective it's okay, what are the needs and wants that I have that are distinct to me. So if we look at it in terms of material, I'm going to categorize all of this into a material point of view. So you have a material point of view where it's the primal needs, the needs that are kind of intrinsic to you, which I would say are things that you can live without, but you won't live very long without them, because there are things that make you happy. There are things that invigorate you. There are things that make you feel content and grateful. Ignore the happy part. Let's scratch that out. Just grateful, content, and invigorated. The happy I'm going to add to the next one. So grateful and content and invigorated. Those needs make you feel that way. Whether that's drinking a cup of coffee at 5 a.m. in the morning, watching the sunrise, listening to the birds chirp, whatever it may be, that's the kind of middle point, right? And then you have the needs above that, which is a third category of those material needs, which are things that make you happy or excited, or that kind of add that moment. And we'll touch on the emotion a bit later, but I'm going to stop there at that point where it's like that last piece where it's things that make you feel something that you feel is a need or a want. Most of the time we kind of convert our wants into needs, but let's kind of marry them together right now. And we're going to say that that kind of third category is not necessarily true to you, but it's something that you've been kind of told that you want, told that you need. For example, a new colorway on your phone, or a new size of a phone, better megapixels, the next fashion, all that stuff, right? It's things that you can definitely live without. And if you don't have them and you have the number 2 level kind of material aspects, you're going to feel a bit of a difference of kind of things that you want versus things that you need, things that make you feel kind of content, and things that make you feel happy. So those are the kind of 3 categories of material aspects. Now I'm going to kind of backtrack a bit. Before we touch material, we're going to kind of sit this kind of in between, right? So we started on the topic of time is fleeting. We have limited time here. We know that for sure. We're going to live, then we're going to die. We're going to be born, we're going to live, then we're going to die. So what comes after that, right? And we've touched on the material thing, and obviously the material thing is kind of a point. This is kind of this is like filling needs and making the most out of what you have. But before that, it's this kind of middle point where it's deciding, right? What are we going to do? We need to make action. We need to do something. Why do we need to have action, right? Why can't we just go through a life of just doing nothing? If it's like, okay, what's the meaning of life? I don't really care. There's no purpose here. I'm just going to do nothing. Well, inaction results in action, because inaction, your body's still going to be moving. Your organism's still going to be functioning. You're still going to be doing things internally. Your brain's still going to be functioning, but you're going to see an adverse effect. You're going to see yourself deteriorating. You're going to see yourself losing muscle mass, for example, bodily functions. Your body organs are going to start kind of, failing a little bit. All that, right? And so inaction still results in outcome. Action still results in outcome. So you have a choice of doing action. Inaction, obviously, we're not going to try and cut our time short, because then if we're asking ourselves the question, what is the meaning of life, we're trying to find some purpose to do something. So we're going to stick to action, because if you're asking yourself, what is the meaning of this, you're probably not looking at saying, okay, what's the meaning? I want to do nothing. You're like, what's the meaning? I want to try and do something. And then you're like, okay, well, I don't have an answer, so I'm just going to do nothing. So let's take it as you're going to try and find an action, because all of it has a consequences. So now we've just clearly defined, if I summarize that, outcome in terms of cause and effect. What you do has an effect, no matter what, inaction. And so if we now touch on the idea of philosophy, the idea that there are different angles or perspectives to view life on, whether that's hedonism, whether that's materialism, whether that's utilitarianism, or it's another one, nihilism, existentialism. You also have religious point of views, where religion can be that you live in this time as a short period of time. It's a trial period, and then you're going to go to heaven. Or it could be viewed as you're here to suffer for the sins of many, and then you're going to earn your way in heaven that way. Whatever it may be, there's these different philosophical points of views on how to live life and what is the purpose of life. And those can be very beneficial to learn from. However, the problem with that is you don't necessarily have a decisive answer. You have a guide, you have a book, but it's like, okay, I know I have to do these basic things. I know if I take it, so religiously, I know if I live morally, I'm going to be doing what I'm supposed to be doing. But if I can live morally doing things that I hate doing, like I can be morally moral while sitting in a cubicle all day, or I can be moral while being on a farm, or I can be moral while painting. So then you're like, okay, well, there's definitely distinctions there. And if I'm suffering while being in a cubicle, but I'm being moral, or I'm feeling fulfilled by painting, but I'm still being moral, then it's like, okay, well, now there's definitely something I'm missing here. So now we kind of get into that point of view where it's like you have these philosophical blueprints, but we also know that there's this thing as actions, like cause and effect. There's outcomes. So the whole point of these kind of religious points of views and these philosophical points of views, for example, with nihilism, is that there's no point to what you do here because you're going to die and there's going to be nothing. And so it's kind of like this endpoint. Or with hedonism, it's like take everything you ever want that makes you feel good and just do it all. Or materialism is you're focusing, or sorry, utilitarianism, that's where my brain was going. Utilitarianism is to do everything that is useful to you, right? What is the purpose? If there's no purpose behind it, don't do it. So it's kind of like how to live in those blueprints with the condition of what happens after. However, you're not going to see what happens after. You're not going to feel that final point until you're at the end. So if you're young and you're 15, or if you're mid 30s, you're going to be doing things that, from a nihilistic point of view, for example, where you're like, okay, I can go around and do a bunch of drugs and go party all the time because, like, when I die, nothing matters. Or I can quit my job and go surfing all day and nothing matters. And it's like, well, you're still probably going to be here for another 5 years. You're still probably going to be here for another 30 years. You're still probably going to be here for however long, right? No one's been like, hey, you're on the terminal list and you're about to kind of go, so it's like, do whatever you want. If you're from that perspective, then sure, but that's not everyone. And most people who are nihilistic aren't always in that point, like in that category, right? It's like, okay, I clearly have to do something because if I do nothing, yeah, in the end it means nothing, but currently it definitely means something. So, with that in mind, you now have the next point where it's, okay, I need to do something that's going to have a positive effect, because if I do something that has a negative effect, it's going to be a downward spiral, right? You have these kind of paths where it's like, okay, if nothing means anything, like you keep going a nihilistic point of view, right? If nothing has a purpose and I do whatever I want, let's say this person pisses me off and for an extreme example, like Cain and Abel, right? Cain kills Abel because like he's upset at his brother and he kills his brother, but then he has to live his rest of his life knowing that he killed his brother. Yeah, he's gonna die and go to hell or go to heaven. Or if you take away heaven and hell and think nihilistically, he's gonna die and nothing's gonna happen. But you still have to live with the fact that your brother was murdered by you. And so that's the whole point. It's like these directions you choose are gonna take you down this path. And in this world, you can end up in prison. You can lose relationships if you cheat, for example. You can destroy your liver and live with, like, I think it's like shingles and stuff. If you and like these like just a deteriorating body if you drink all the time, and then you have all these other kind of effects, right? And so everything you do has a ripple effect, a butterfly effect, and you have to pick a direction. So now with that in mind, if I kind of backtrack now, we go from, or starting from the beginning again, we have time is fleeting. We have limited time here. You're not going to have yesterday. You have different philosophical perspectives, and then you need to kind of choose a direction, because inaction and action always result in something, so there's always an outcome. So now you have to pick the outcome that has the best butterfly effect kind of for you. So now it's like, what's the best direction for me? And now we're at the point that everyone is normally asking this question: what is the meaning of life? Because you're like, I need to pick something. I know I want to do something, but I have no idea what I want to do. I know what I want to do, but what is the point of all the blah, blah, blah? So it's like, okay, you know that there's a point to something you do, because at the end of the day, you have to live with your life until you die. So you have to choose something regardless, and you have to be comfortable with the consequences. And generally, when we want to be comfortable with the consequences, we want to do things that are going to be fulfilling or engaging or exciting, because we don't want to be going on these negative paths forever, right? People may enjoy, like if you come from that kind of dark perspective, it's like, I enjoy just being upset and depressed and stuff like that. It's like, you don't. You just like identifying with it, right? Like generally you identify with it because that's become your persona and you like the way people perceive you that way and stuff. But internally you're like, no one really enjoys suffering. So obviously we want to do things that pull us away from suffering. So now we get back to what I talked about previously, which was the material, right? The material is the whole thing of those three categories: the primal, the personal kind of material components that are true to you, and then the final, which is the wants and needs defined. The thing with wants and needs is that you are told that you want this. You are told that you need this. And that changes everything. For example, if the simple pleasures in life, like watching a sunset, smelling the fresh sea, and cooking is things that just fulfill you. You feel great with that. And that'll be a happy life. Let's add one more thing. You like singing. So that's the four things you like doing in life is you just want to enjoy the sunset, you want to drink your coffee, you want to cook good meals, and you want to sing all the time. Okay. And then you go through life, like you're 14, 15, you have an amazing voice and you want to keep singing. And then you go through life and you're like being told, hey, um, not everyone makes it as a singer. If you do these kind of like small gigs, you're not going to really make it anywhere. And like, yeah, sure, you'll earn a bit of money, but it's not enough. And you should have a good life. You should have a big house. You should have nice cars. You should be able to wear these nice watches and dresses and jewelry and cars and suits and whatever it may be, right? And it's like, okay, well, like I know I need that because like everyone has it and they look super cool having it. And then you get into the category of wants, and then you're like, okay, well, I know I'm not going to make it as a singer, so I might just go and do a degree that gives me that, like an engineering degree. And then you become an engineer, and then you go do something else, or you become a finance person, and you go into the financial world, you go work on Wall Street, and you kill yourself doing that. And the thing is, yeah, it may be good for people who feel fulfilled by doing that, but if you don't feel fulfilled by doing that, that's going to deplete you. It's going to drain from you. It's going to take away from you. And so you end up down these paths of going down these categories of different directions that are not true to you. You just go down there and you kind of make what you want to make and you do what you kind of think you want to do because you're told you need to do it. And it's like, okay, like I'm going to go down that path. Now I have a bucket load of money. Like I have $1 million, $2 million every year coming in. I have a bonus of 1.5. Like, it's amazing, right? And you're like just hitting 25 or something and you're like, wow, this is great. I'm a multimillionaire and I thought I'd never get here. And then you're like, okay, what do I do with this money? It's like, okay, well, I'm told I want a new phone. I'm told I need the coolest car. I'm told I need a clean suit. I'm told I need a really nice watch. Okay, I think that's cool. And when my peers look at me, they're gonna be like, hey, this is super cool. You have a really nice watch. Or I like in the American Psycho, right? The little card, the places that they eat, the girlfriends they have. And it's like, hmm, okay, let's look at the impact on that. So we're parking that, right? We have primal needs, needs that are true to you, which are the simple pleasures, and then you have the needs that are kind of wants that have been converted into needs. Like I need the new phone, I need the thing. What's driving that, right? What is the purpose behind that? Because it's like we're humans, we're animals, we're by nature animalistic. So it's like, why aren't we just focusing on survival? Why aren't we just focusing on the primal needs? Why have we ended up down this path? And it's like, okay, well, there has to be something driving this. And what distinguishes humans from most other animals and species and insects and all that? It's probably the primal thing that makes you feel, which is emotions. Emotions are the thing that kind of guides us to do a lot of things. You get angry, you get hot-headed, you may punch something, you may yell at someone, you get sad, you cry, you get happy, you jump, excited, you run around. Those actions come from emotions. You feel excited, you just bought this new thing, and then you want to feel that excitement again, you want to buy another thing. So obviously emotions are our driver. Our emotions are the thing that's moving us to do more than our basic instincts. So if that's the case, and this is an obvious point of view, it's like clearly I know if I feel this way, I'm going to want to do this thing. And so my emotions are going to be driving me to some point. And yes, you can use logic. And a lot of people say use logic to get through life. Emotions are going to sway you in different ways. And I will agree with that to a certain extent. But we do recognize, and the most harmonious way to live is by balancing the two. Because if you shove your emotions down and mute it out, you become numb and you become very logic based. And if you were born to be someone who's very, I would say, experiential and you want to go through life and do things, the main thing that's going to make you experience life is feeling. And so if you're depleting yourself of that, you're kind of going to end up in that same cubicle lifestyle, right? And that's not really living if that's kind of what you were meant to do, and yet you're in a cubicle and you're just doing nothing. So clearly emotions have some meaning there. There's a reason for that. So there's a purpose behind having emotions. That's a driver to do more, to expand consciousness, to think better, to move higher, to be more elevated as a human being. So let's look at the emotional spectrum, right? The emotional spectrum, you can look up the chart anywhere on the internet, what's like the emotional spectrum, and you have lower vibration and higher vibration, right? Everyone's seen this. It's all over the internet. If you haven't, Google it. It's there. Search up emotional vibrations chart, whatever, on YouTube or whatever. It's there. So lower level is all those kind of like sadness, anger, frustration, all that. And then you have the high level, which is excitement, joy, happiness, all that. And then in the middle, it's kind of like this, like, I think it's content. but I'm not too sure. I know there's different ones, but I'm gonna break it up a little bit, right? You have like the higher ones, which kind of go into happiness, excitement, and it's kind of like this chart of going into like this satisfaction point. But I want to flip that on it. Instead of being this kind of like pyramid, I'm gonna make it into like two different tips, right? It's kind of like instead of going up to this kind of satisfaction point where you're just feeling this kind of like enlightenment and these great moments that you see at the top of the chart, I'm gonna cut that out a little bit because yes, you can go down those points, but I'm gonna make it more simplistic to correlate with the material points and just have like this little in between where it's like at the bottom you have the negative emotions that are low vibration. You have middle, which I would call a little bit of like a high vibration, which is confusing. Let's remove vibration. We'll backtrack. Let's start again. You have these emotions, which are the negative ones, which I'd say sadness, anger, frustration. Above it, at the top, you have happiness, excitement, joy, and then in the middle, we'll call that content, satisfaction, fulfillment. That's kind of a new way of looking at it. But for contrast, definitely look up the emotional chart and like looking at the vibrations of it. That'll kind of give you some indication on seeing, okay, like how do things stack? What are my inclinations? I've definitely heard someone mention this a while ago when I was younger, where it's like your inclination is to go up in that emotional vibration chart. So if you're feeling sad, anger is a higher vibration than sadness. So you choose to be angry instead of sad. And it's like things like that where it's like you'll try to go a bit above and it's like, okay, why am I always angry? Well, maybe you're sad underneath, but you're just ignoring it and pushing it down by being angry, right? So definitely use that as a little guide to understand kind of where we're trying to go naturally as emotional entities. Now, if we break it into the way I did it to compare the two of the material and then the emotional side, right? So bottom is sadness, depression, anger, frustration, content, fulfillment, all that's in the middle, and then you have happiness, excitement. You can never experience happiness without sadness. Why? Because you don't know what happiness is without knowing what sadness is. You just feel this kind of baseline. You're born with this kind of baseline, and it's like, okay, this thing makes me giggle, it makes me feel happy when you're a kid. And it's like, I don't feel good with this thing, and then you kind of feel sad, and you start crying and stuff. And it's like, okay, when you get older, you know that if these high moments of excitement make you feel really good, then you kind of have a contrast, which is these depressed moments that make you don't not feel good, right? And it's up and above this kind of baseline. So you have your baseline, then you have like the excitement and happiness and joy, and then you have the baseline again, and below it's your sadness and depression and all that, right? And so now if we correlate that with the material, with your primal needs just kind of meet that point of being like, okay, I need to fulfill these primal needs of eating, sleeping, hunting, right? And that's your survival point of view. So your body has this natural thing and your mind has this natural thing of survival. So it's like, I need to survive. What is going to get me to survive? Generally, when you're in survival mode, it's mostly fight or flight. So if you're facing danger, you're going to feel these kind of emotions come up where it's like anxiety, fear, all that, where it's like those are kind of those negative emotions that drive you to flight and run away from those things. And then you have anger, frustration, which is those fight emotions, right? And anybody can like feel that within themselves. This isn't like a kind of like teaching you something. It's like, think of it as every time you've been angry or every time you were ready to fight someone and you didn't want to like fight them, like you weren't fighting recreationally, you needed to fight someone to kind of survive. It was like you were angry, you were frustrated, you were pumped up, right? And then you were like running away from something. It was like you were anxious, you were fearful, all that, right? So clearly there's a correlation there, right? And then that's meeting those kind of primal needs. So we need to meet those primal needs of survival. That's defined, right? And then you have above that, you have those kind of needs that are true to you, and those needs that are true to you correlate to those fulfillment, content moments. Because it's like, I'm obviously not feeling super excited every morning I drink my cup of coffee and look at the sunrise. Yes, if I'm doing it for like the first time after 3 months because I'm in a super cold place and it's like the sun barely rises, and then I go to like the beach and I'm on the sand and I see it rise, I'm going to be excited and happy. But generally, if you're experiencing the sunrise every morning, you're drinking your coffee, you're not going to be like, oh my god, this is the greatest thing ever, and then wake up again, oh my god, this is the greatest thing ever. It's not like that. You're just gonna be like, this is good, this feels nice, you're grateful, you're fulfilled. Those are those kind of middle needs, right? And then above that, you have the wants, and you have the wants that have been converted into needs, like the new phone, the new watch, the new clothes, the new earrings, the new jewelry. And that's where like you're excited that you just bought it. You go shopping at the mall, you go to wherever, you go to the Bay, you go to Saks, you go to wherever, right? And you buy the next like Louis Vuitton bag, or you buy a Calvin Klein suit, or you buy something from wherever, right? And it's this fancy, flashy thing, and people are gonna look at that and like, oh, that's expensive. Oh, that's nice. A Mont Blanc pen. Oh, that's a really cool Rolex watch. And then you feel excited. You're going home. You feel really boosted by it, right? When you put it on, you feel this kind of excitement and all that. But then if you use the point of view of like, okay, there's seasonality to fashion, for example, if we're on that topic. Every year, 2022, you start like, hey, 2022, I just started earning. I'm going to start kind of falling in line with the fashion trends, right? Fall, winter, summer, spring, spring, summer, fall, winter, spring, summer. If I do it in order, then you do 2023, you go and buy those collections. Then you go in 2024, you're sitting at fall collection. You're about to go to winter collection, but then you're like, oh, damn, I have to pay for this thing this month, or I just got a new apartment and I can't really get that next trend. And you're like, oh man, like I know I like my apartment, but like I really want to go get like the winter collection for 2024. But I'm like, wait, look at your 2022 winter collection. How do you feel about that? It's like, it's a thing of the past. And I'm like, okay, the thing of the past. So does it no longer make you feel happy? No, it's just kind of like whatever. How do you feel about the fact that you can't get the 2024 winter collection? Well, I'm kind of like disappointed. I'm kind of like sad about that. And then now imagine we amplify that. There's a lot of other things. If you're not a fashion person, there's a million other things, for example, right? It's like you can't get the next car. You can't get the new rims on your car. You can't get this cool dress that you see at the mall or whatever. Or you want to get a new dress for an event that you're going to, and you can't right now. And it's like you feel sad about that. You feel depressed about it. And it's like, but then you go and buy a dress for another event and you're like super excited and happy about it. And it's like, pay attention to what's happening in your emotions, right? You have the middle, which is your content and fulfilled. But now this thing at the top is throwing you from like top to bottom, top to bottom. It's like, why are you feeling this fear, anxiety, worry of like being like, oh, no one's going to like the fact that I'm wearing the same dress twice, or no one's going to like the fact that my suit's like 3 years old and I have to get it fitted better, or I got to get a new print on it or whatever. And you're like correlating it to like these primal emotions where it's like those primal emotions only kick in when you need to survive. So how are you ending up in these weird, sad kind of survival states when you're just doing things that you want, when your core needs are met? You're surviving, you're living. Like, I don't get it, right? Do you get it, right? It seems weird. So now we think about this, like the needs, the wants and stuff, right? And it's like, okay, well, if the needs and wants are throwing me all over the place, there's probably something wrong in there. It's like, okay, are they true to you? Are those needs and wants true to you? So it's like, okay, if I were to live without the next collection, the next winter collection, if I were to live without this with the same phone for the next 5 years, if I were to wear the same outfit for three consecutive events, but just kind of accessorize it or whatever, right? Or just the same thing, would it really have a crazy impact on me? Obviously, if you're someone who's into fashion, right, you're gonna find that like your core needs are like that. The middle point is gonna be like you want to look good, you want to look elegant, you want to add personality to it. So you, yes, there is a correlation between it. But if you're someone who's like, I really don't care what I want, I just want to wear something that's like comfortable, and as long as it looks presentable, I'm happy. And then you find yourself like a year later into this whole kind of thing of like, I need to look cooler than the next person and have a new dress because they laughed at me last time I had the same dress last time. And it's like, okay, that's where you kind of face that point, right? So it's the things where it's like, if you were to live without it, how would you feel in terms of, is it meeting the content and fulfillment, or is it just throwing you along that kind of emotional spectrum? And that's where you start to notice that in life, we are being led down this path of living towards these directions of what society tells us to do, what society tells us we want, should want, what society tells us is good for us, like getting a stable job and choosing a career that makes us the most amount of money. And it's all consumerist, because why do you need $1 million a year? Why do you need $10 million? Why do you need $1 billion? It's like, okay, how much can you really buy? And it's like, does everybody feel fulfilled standing on a yacht? Like, yeah, it's cool. But what defines cool? What defines exciting? Is it cool and exciting because other people are looking at you being like, oh, I wish I was like that? Or are you just like, I like the fact that I'm on like a house, on like basically a house or like a hotel on the middle of the ocean, and the ocean's great, and I love the idea that like I can eat these like nice foods here, and I'm a food connoisseur, and I like great wines, and I like the fact that this boat is well put together, and I appreciate good service and the way it works. And it's like, how many people are thinking like that? When like you get rich and you buy like a bucket of caviar or something, And it's like, do you really like caviar? Like, do you really like how salty caviar is? Do you like oysters and caviar, or is that just what rich people do? And it's like, oh, okay. Then it's kind of clear. It's like, yeah, now it makes sense that these things that you want aren't necessarily true to you. And then it starts to kind of clarify things, right? It's like, okay, if I remove the third category of all the things that are not true to me, all the things that make me feel fluctuated in emotions, and I say these are the things that I've been told that I want, but I don't really care about, then you're like, okay, so now what's next? So now we're at the next point. So let's start again. We'll map it out again and I'll get to the next point. So we've started with time is fleeting. We know that we're here for a limited amount of time. Then we went to action, and inaction always leads to something, so you have to make an action. Then we led to the fact there's a bunch of philosophical perspectives, but we need to think about how life has cause and effect and how we need to live with what decisions we make. So we have to pick a path. And then we went to there's three different categories of material aspects: primal needs, needs that are true to you, and then wants that have been converted into needs that are defined by society or defined by other people and not defined by you, or converted by you but really just influenced by other people. And then you have the other side, which is emotions, and emotions are kind of like guiding you, where you have your negative emotions: sadness, anger, frustration, content, fulfillment, and then you have excitement and happiness. And then one more thing before I move on. Within the kind of middle point of the material side, right? In the material side, you also have the fact that there are things that are not necessarily they're not necessarily a requirement to live, but they're things that you've been conditioned to enjoy throughout your life. For example, if you've always been someone who likes to dress well and likes the idea of fabric and stuff, right? That can be considered material and a want. But if you find passion in the different types of material and and like the design and the style and the silhouette and all that, that is something that's true to you, compared to someone who, if we take the want, which is the above section, the third category, where it's like they want the coolest thing that looks best in fashion with the nice color, with the high price tag, with the cool logo. And it's like, you don't care how the material is made, because if I were to give you a hat with this really nice, like if I were to give you a suit and it's not by Xenia, but it's Xenia material, right? You would, if you were in that second category, be like, wow, this is really nice material. It feels good. It feels comfortable. I like the way the suit's cut and fitted to me and all that. But if you were coming from the third category, you'd be like, but it doesn't say Xenia. Where's like the label? If I like kind of like have it, I don't see that I'm wearing a Xenia suit. I'm just wearing Xenia material, but like no one cares about that. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. You don't really care about the fact that it's quality material, the nature or the precise thing about what you're enjoying. You care more about the fact that it's the brand name, that it's the logo, that it's the superficial point of view. So that's the kind of distinguishing point. So even though you may consider material between number two of material aspect, it's still something that's true to you because you enjoy it for its core nature rather than its symbolic material aspect of kind of superficial nature. So that's a clear distinction there. But anyways, we're at that point. We talked about material, the three categories. We talked about emotion. So then what's next? How do you pick a path? How do you define a purpose, right? So the whole point with life is obviously we have meaning to it. We need to provide meaning to it because we've discovered that we need to do something. We discovered that we have wants and needs, and we discovered that we're driven by our emotions. So we kind of have to take those and decide a direction. And the thing is, we're kind of led down two paths. We're led down a path of purpose and enjoyment and fulfillment, which is like if you have a hobby for piano, for example, you like playing piano or you like painting, you like doing these things, but obviously you haven't monetized it. And then we lead to another path, which is the monetary aspect. And the monetary aspect is the fact that you're told that you need to do everything and anything to make money because money is your survival. And so we have this kind of life cycle of you're born, you learn a lot, and then you pick your career, you get into your career in your 20s, and then you work really hard, you make a lot of money, and then you retire, and then you do whatever you want. And that's this kind of like thing, right? And it's like, okay, well, that's one way of looking at it. And then the other way of looking at it is you go through life and then you pick like this kind of thing that you're really passionate about, and you started as a kid being like this person who has a strong inclination to have his natural talent for playing the piano or doing art or just painting or singing or making people laugh. And then you cultivate it, and over time you kind of go down this life and career of art and passion. And the interesting thing is the fact that we have this life cycle of learn, work, retire, do whatever has corrupted the idea that we are going to work for the rest of our lives, because the moment most people retire is the moment that all those health conditions kick in, because it's like they have no idea what to do with themselves. They push themselves to the core. It was things they didn't really want to do. They end up getting heart attacks when they retire. It's like, I don't know what to do with myself. What do I do with the rest of my life? I have 80 years, 30 years. Sorry, I have 40 years. I have 30 years. Or 60 or 70. You have 20 years. It's like, what do I do? I'm gonna die soon, and I've like wanted to do all these things, and just everything hits you, right? And it's like, okay, if we go back to the material and we're like, okay, if we look at just category 1 and 2, you meet your primal needs, that's one, and then you meet those needs that are fulfilling to you. You ignore the third one. The third one has led you down this crazy path of wants and needs and sadness and everything and happiness, and you're just all over the place. And so you want to stabilize and fulfillment. That's going to be the most enjoyable way of living, is being fulfilled, content, and grateful. So that's kind of your middle point. You're like, okay, I'm going to focus on meeting those needs that are true to me. And it's like, okay, there's something there. So I meet the needs that are true to me. That kind of helps me find a little bit of a purpose, right? Because it's like, okay, if I'm really into something particular that's true to me, like making people laugh is a perfect example. Like, I like being funny and making people laugh. And it's like, okay, you like being funny. Then we go down the path of, well, is it something you can do every day? Because a job is something you're going to have to do every day. But the thing is, in life, whether you're viewing it from a religious point of view or you're viewing it from any point of view, really, it's like you have to keep operating. You have to keep doing something. If you stop using your brain's going to deteriorate. You're going to die. If you stop using your body's going to deteriorate, and then it's going to start getting diseases. Then you'll die. So obviously, you need to kind of go down this path of living in a way that keeps your body going, your mind going, and that's engaging. You want to keep growing. You want to keep expanding. You want to keep learning. So you have to pick something that obviously keeps you engaged for the rest of your life. And generally, that's going to be something that makes you feel fulfilled for your entire life. Because that's going to be the highest point you'll kind of want to go to, is fulfillment, excitement, enjoyment, is things that pull you away from it. Where if you're always up there in that space of trying to be happy, excited, and joyful, you're going to always also feel the anterior, which is the opposite, facing that sadness, the depression. So you need to kind of pick that nice middle point where it's like, I'm content. Let's choose the right words. I'm content. I'm fulfilled. And I am going down a path of doing things that are true to me, right? So that's a definite kind of place of finding that pure point where you're like, okay, I want to go down this path. So it's like, if I could do something for the rest of my life, every day, up to the point of death, what would it be? And now you have to pick, okay, like there are definitely things that I can do for the rest of my life, and there are definitely things that I can't do for the rest of my life just by their very nature. So if you're young, for example, and you're like, I love playing video games, you're like 13, 14, like, I want to be a pro video gamer, and then you want to do that for the rest of your life. And it's like, I can guarantee you that you cannot do that for the rest of your life. One, the people that have gone through the life cycle of gaming when they were teens, became pros, earned a lot of money, started a business with it, became super successful at the top of it, are not playing video games as much as they used to anymore, or are not doing it professionally. They've done other things. They've gone down other ventures. They've faced positions where they're like, I can't do this anymore. I'm bored of playing video games. I've grinded it out. I want to do something else. There's a cap to it. And then on the other hand, there are things such as singing, such as dancing, such as helping people, making people laugh. And yes, you can make the argument that you're not going to be able to dance when you're 80, right? And it's like, sure, like you can, if you take care of your health really well, you'll be much slower, but you'll still be able to move and stuff like that, right? But there's the kind of like the arc of it, where it's like you learn a lot when you're a kid, and you become really good, then you become a professional, or you just do it like for a really long time, and then you teach people because you're old and retired, right? And it's like, okay, well, now it's like, okay, if I'm going to pick a path, let's say we want to be I'm going to use, okay, so we can do comedian, because like anybody can, like you can make people laugh for like the rest of your life, because as long as you can keep talking, you can make people laugh, right? So that's kind of like a unique one, where you can spend the rest of your life from the conscious ages of like 4 onwards, making people laugh, being a little class clown, or just being the kid in the back of the class that makes people laugh, and then all of a sudden you end up being a stand-up comedian. Then you end up being like old, and you're close on your deathbed, but you're just making people laugh till the end, and then you feel fulfilled, you feel happy, you feel good about the jokes that you developed and moved on, the stories you can tell, right? So there's that. But then there's the other ones where it's like you can't always do it forever, but you can always be involved in it forever. And it's things that make you feel fulfilled, right? So dancing, for example, or playing a sport is one example where it's like, okay, if I go down that path of being an athlete or being a singer or being a painter, and I can't do it to the end of the to the rest of, for the rest of my life, I have to see how I can still be involved. Because if you're playing video games, yes, you can be a video game coach or instructor, but it's like there's like those coaches just like any sports team, and that's definitely a option to go into. But if that's something you don't find yourself feeling an inclination for, then you can't necessarily say I'm going to do this for the rest of my life, because you have to be able to survive that kind of like life cycle, right? And so the things that make you feel the most fulfilled are things that you can keep doing and being passionate about. That word, passionate about, for the rest of your life. So if you eliminate the money factor and you pick a thing that's or something that's very passionate about, like dancing, and you're like, okay, I was a young kid, I'm gonna dance, I'm gonna learn how to be really good at it, I'm gonna perform, and then you try and become a professional. Let's say you become a professional, and then you go through your career. Then you kind of hit that point where it's like, I'm a bit old, I can't perform at the highest levels. And then you kind of have to like retire your career, but you can still teach, you can still dance on the side, you can still perform a little, but you're not going to be performing every night at high intensity. And then up to the ages where you're just kind of like, I can't move that much. You get stuck in a wheelchair, for example, or whatever. And you have this knowledge and talent still in your head, but you can teach people, you can instruct people, you can help people, and you can be involved for the rest of your life. And that can be your passion, your career, your dedication to this life, to this developing existence that we have. But then there's this falter point, right? Where it's like, that sounds great and dandy. It's like, okay, I'm going to pick the thing that I really enjoy, and then I'm going to do it for the rest of my life, and I know I can do it and I can keep doing it. But then you face this kind of pitfall, which ties into the material thing, where it's like those wants and needs. And the other side of what we're being told that we should want is money, right? Because it's like, you could be a very, very talented dancer, but you just not discovered, or you can be really good, but you're just not the best, and you don't get the chance to enter to these competitions or to perform on stage or to go to musicals or to be in movies and stuff, or be a backstage dancer. Is it backstage dancer? I don't know. Like, is it like a performer, right? And so obviously, like, your family, your friends, the people you know, hoping that there's like literally having the best intentions for you, are going to be like, hey, you're better off picking a career that's going to have like longevity to it and provide you money, because money is security blanket, and you can take care of yourself, and then you can go on these like kind of comfortable paths, and you don't have to be worried every day. And it's like, okay, how much of that money is going to keep me true to my passions and keep me going down the path of what I want to do, compared to taking me away from that and leading me towards the paths of wants and needs that are in that third category, that are wants that I've converted into needs, such as the latest greatest thing. And you look at it in terms of, okay, well, how much money do I really need to keep living true to myself, fulfilled to myself? Is it like a lot of money? Like, do you need an above average salary? Well, if you're a person who's like, okay, I really enjoy sunsets, I like cooking, I like listening to good music, and I want to dance every day. Okay, and that's literally it. Like, you're not like, okay, like I want like the nice fabrics, or I want like these really cool clothes, or I want like this kind of new fashion with like every dance I make, and it's like I want a new outfit. It's like, no, like I really just want to move every day, and I want to watch the sunrise, and I want to make good meals. I kind of changed it there, I know, but like I want to make good meals, I want to dance every day, and I want to watch the sunrise and listen to music. Four things. Okay, well, to do that, there's plenty places in the world where you can go there, live a very comfortable life on a low salary, or like a median or at par salary that covers all of those needs, and you can live a very, very fulfilled life. And the thing is, a lot of people will dissuade you from doing that, but if it is something that is truly happy towards you, maybe that is a path that you can choose. Because if you find yourself going on this path where it's like, okay, I got to pick a career, you pick a career that's far away from dancing. It's like, I'm going to be a data analyst, for example, and you go become a data analyst, and it's really exhausting work, and you're like, it doesn't feel fulfilling, I feel depleted after work and all that, pardon me. And then you just end up realizing that it's like not really what you wanted to do. It depletes you, it takes away from your livelihood, it takes away from your excitement, your joy, your thrill of life. And eventually your kind of like longevity just starts to deplete, and you don't feel happy, you don't feel excited anymore, you feel sad a lot of times too, and you start kind of filling those voids with those material things. And now you start to realize it's like, okay, if I stray away from my passions and hobbies, I end up in this cycle that makes me feel sad, and I end up back at the top with those material things that I didn't really want in the first place, but I'm using that to fill the void of feeling sad. Well, that's interesting. And that's something we see in a lot of people these days, where it's like you're working a desk job, you're very busy, you don't have a lot of friends, you can't spend a lot of time outside, so you feel this kind of void forming, and you really don't want to be working, but like you just have to, you've decided that you have to because you need the money, and then you start filling this void with material things, and you get more material, and then it becomes a cycle where it's like, well, my happiness depends on the next thing I can buy, so it's like I got to keep earning more, I got to keep working more, and then you're just in this rat race. And the rat race really isn't about competing against other people. It's really about filling your void. And filling your void comes from the gratification received from one, the thing you buy, and two, the other people you have. So it becomes this kind of cycle. And it's interesting because the further away you are from your passions, the more miserable you're going to be because you end up wanting to fill those voids. And so, as we can see, we've kind of got to this point where it's like, is money and success the determinant on a meaningful life? Obviously, everyone's going to be like, no. If I ask you that question, I can ask anybody on the street, say, hey, will money define, is money the meaning of life? They're going to be like, obviously not. And I'm going to be like, wait, but don't you need money to survive and buy the things that you want? And they're going to be like, oh yeah, that's true. But then it's like, okay, wait, but what if I eliminate those wants and I just say, I want to be fulfilled with the things that put me in this place of content and gratitude? Well, then if I enter that space, then I no longer want these big things. And then if I go down my passion and I find a way to monetize my passion, because I can do it my whole life. Like I can be let's say I'm a dancer. I can dance and become really good until like I get to school. Then I'm like, okay, I want to be a performer. I can work in these kind of local clubs and gigs. And yeah, you may not earn a lot of money, but it's enough to pay the bills. It's enough to keep you meeting all those primal needs. And it's enough to keep you waking up every morning, listening to music, watching the sunrise, cooking your own food, and dancing. And you're like, yeah, I'm not the richest kid, and I'm not, hopping on a yacht in 40 years. I'm definitely not ever flying private, like ever, because you're not like a high performer. But you know what? You're waking up every morning and doing what you love. And the interesting thing is, the question is like, why? So it's like, yeah, like, and then it sounds like kind of weird, 'cause it's like, okay, well, like, obviously, I want to do those like grandiose things because they're super like appealing, but it's like, why? It's like I also know that I want to do these things that are passionate and true to me. So now we're at this point, right? If I kind of clarify where we are, we're at this point where it's like, yes, I want to do things that are passionate to me. Yes, I'm willing to sacrifice the things, or to stray away. I'm not going to use the word sacrifice. I'm just going to say I'm willing to ignore those wants that are defined by society, and I don't want to do things that are not true to me because it's going to put me in a cycle of just constantly chasing the next best thing. So now it's like this kind of contention point, right? Where it's like, well, what about the fact that like these things are available and I could be the next star. I could be the person who like is highest performer and standing on yachts, or like if I really work hard I can do that and then I can dance after. And it's like, are you really willing to spend 40 years of your life working really hard, become a CEO, earn enough money to stand on a yacht, or start a business and become a CEO and have like a bucket load of money to do all these cool things and then dance, when it's like you're here for a limited amount of time? You have 80 years, and yes, it doesn't seem like, it seems very long when you're young, and trust me, I thought that when I was young. And then when you get older and you're working, it starts to shorten, and years, and then you start realizing it's like, oh, I thought it was like March next month, but it's like June next month, and it's like, holy crap. And then like it becomes years go faster, decades go faster, and you're like, time is moving very fast. Is this sacrifice worth it to have these niceties when all I really want are the simple pleasures? And so then it becomes a question of, are the things that I really want true to me, which I've already raised a bunch of times here? If not, then what is the purpose I'm going to go down that fulfills that category? And then you kind of choose your meaning of life. You choose your meaning of life that makes you feel fulfilled, content, and neglects the things that are the wants defined by society, because that's just a infinite hole of disparity and emotional fluctuation. So it's a very crazy path to get down that whole blueprint of defining your meaningful life. But I'm going to summarize it one more time and then we'll kind of conclude. So you have fleeting time. That's an obvious, it's a given. Time is limited. You're here for 80 years, you're here for 100 years, you're here for however long. You have a limited time here. You'll never have yesterday defined. Next, we have philosophical perspectives that can guide you and give you blueprints of life. We know that we have an option for action and inaction, but we need like a decision to do things because we can take a philosophical blueprint, but we can't necessarily be given an answer on what to do with our day to day because we realize that we're always looking at the kind of endpoint. So it's like, okay, I need to do something. Action results in something and inaction results in something. So I need to pick an action that takes me down a direction that is kind of true to me because I have to pick a direction because there's a thing called cause and effect. So because there's cause and effect, my directions matter and I want to do something that stacks in a way that makes it feel fulfilled and content. Originally, we would have thought that it wants to make us feel happy, but happiness is also contrasted by sadness. So you're going to feel both, but if you feel content, you're kind of at that baseline where you're grateful and fulfilled. So then we examine our material perspective, and our material perspective is wants and needs. And then we look at it primal needs. You need to have those to survive. Needs that are true to you, things that are you're passionate about, that you enjoy doing, that are simple pleasures that make you feel fulfilled. And then you have the wants and needs defined by society that you think you want, that have converted into needs, and you realize that you can live without them. They won't kill you if you live without them, and you'll actually feel better off by ignoring those. Then you contrast that with you pair that whole material pillar with the emotional side, and you view it in terms of negative emotions, fulfillment, content, positive emotions. You want to stay at fulfillment and content. Your negative emotions are fueled by your primal needs, and then your middle needs of things that make you feel fulfilled, like simple pleasures, are that middle point of fulfillment. And then you have the happiness, which is drawn from those third needs, but then those third needs bring you to happiness, but then also bring you to sadness because you're in this constant gratification loop of being like, I want the next best thing, I feel super excited and happy, I got it, but now I can't get the next best thing, so I feel super sad about it. And this person has a nice car and I got a nice car, but their car's nicer, now I feel sad. Just all over the place. So we want to eliminate that, and then we want to just stay in the middle. And then it's like, okay, what do we do? What do we choose? And it's like, okay, you have to look at the effect of money and how money can influence the way that you go about life. And then from there, you examine how money can stray you away from your purpose. And then if you're strayed away from your purpose, you end up in this loop again because you're like, I got to fill a void because I don't feel good. I feel depleted. I feel despair. So I go up to the category of the third material needs, where I'm like, okay, I want this, I want this, I want this, but then you're filling a void, and then you start feeling the negative fluctuation again, you stray away from your passions. So then you go to your passions, the final point, where it's like, I stay and dedicate my life, my meaning of life is to my passion, which is something I can do for the rest of my life, and I can enjoy it, whether I'm earning money or not, and I'll find a way to monetize it to stay alive and to enjoy those fulfilling moments, and I don't need those wants and needs. And the thing I'm going to end on to conclude from there, because that's the last point we've got, and for you to decide is what is going to be something you can do for the rest of your life that makes you feel fulfilled, and you can do whether you're earning or not, and you're willing to sacrifice all the other cool wants and needs and things that you thought you wanted, where you can just experience fulfilling moments like laughter with friends, and you don't need to be in the nicest places or have the coolest cars and whatnot. And so from that, you have the last point where it's looking at what you're going to do with these kind of moments of life, right? Where it's like you kind of have this final point where you're like, I'm going to live true to myself. I'm going to choose my passions. And you kind of have to come to this point where it's like, I wouldn't say will I be happy, but I'd say like once I'm content, why would I feel drawn towards those things that make me feel happy or excited? And the last thing that I can touch on with that is if you examine any religious text or you examine any type of contrasting of good and evil from any point of view, the one thing that evil kind of resides in, and this can be viewed, simplest form is just, it's a biblical kind of parable perspective where it's greed, gluttony, envy, and I don't want to use the word selfishness, but vanity, yes. Greed and vanity and all those aspects are evil concepts, right? That's evil, right? And by making you greedy and evil, if we associate that with something that's evil, one, before we frame it as evil, I just want to kind of view it as it is something that as we just mapped out, if we're greedy, we want more things. We sacrifice the passions that we have for greed, like to get the money and then we become greedy. Then we become greedy. We want more things. We want more objects. We want to look cool for other people, which becomes vanity. And then we end up in this cycle of happiness, sadness, because there will always be someone that's better than you, and there's always going to be someone that's worse than you, right? And so then you're in that kind of loop, and it's like, okay, well, greed has led me down a very kind of disappointing path, and I don't feel good about life. So it's like, okay, if that's the fact, then it's like, and that's evil, then it's like, okay, well, then what's the good life? And the good life, evidently, is staying true to the things that make you fulfilled, being moral, being good, doing things that are passionate towards you, and straying away from those wants and needs. So if you characterize those wants and needs like hunting for the next best thing, and going for the coolest color on the phone, or getting the nicest clothes, and just staying true to your passions, if you categorize those things of staying with the wants and the wants that have been converted into needs as evil, and then you view the good as just being moral, taking care of yourself, which is the primal needs, and then enjoying those simple pleasures in life, you start to realize, because we've just mapped it out, how that can be evil and this how this can be good. You start to realize that it's almost like evil temptation. It's almost like straying you away. It's almost like selling your soul. And if you look at the people who've earned a lot of money, most of them have had to sell or sacrifice their soul. Not in the kind of, I don't want to jump in the conspiracy point of view, but I would kind of go at it in terms of the more like sacrificing your internal self, where it's like you don't feel emotions because you have to work so hard. If you're crying because something happened, you're taking away from your time to input into work, and that can affect your work, and that can affect your output, and that can affect your performance. So obviously you have to sacrifice that. Now when you're killing your emotional state, it's like you're no longer feeling fulfilled, or having an emotional space, and you start to become numb, detached, and all that. And that's part of your soul. Your soul is intertwined with kind of this emotional space. And so if that's a reality, then it's like, okay, well, if I'm chasing greed and envy and all these other kind of negative pursuits in this kind of evil space, then I'm really just getting rid of my soul. But if I'm pursuing these things that make me fulfilled and content, I am building and developing my soul, and I will present to you the possibility that you are potentially expanding your consciousness, becoming better, becoming more fulfilled, right? So all that being said, this is just kind of food for thought at the tail end, but to kind of wrap it all up, I've presented that kind of way of thinking if we kind of deduce it down that path. And so this is definitely a long video, but the philosophical ones are always going to be long because of that, because we have to deduce it. We have to see it's not an answer for you, it's a path for you to start thinking down a direction that kind of fills those gaps that you've been trying to identify and then answer, right? And so with that in mind, I'm going to finish it on this, right? I'm going to say, decide what is true to you, what passions that you can do and pursue for the rest of your life. And it doesn't have to be one thing. It has to be, I would say, pick something that you can dedicate your life to and build on, and kind of build a career out of, whether that makes you money or not, but it's just something you can keep building and becoming better at. And then also find out what are those core middle material things that you need, that level 2 of material things that you need in life that are going to make you feel fulfilled and content. You take the one thing that you're going to do that's your passion for the rest of your life, and now you kind of have a meaning or a purpose to your life. Then you define your meaning. You kind of put it as a mission statement, saying, my meaning of life is, it's just an example, the meaning of my life is to pursue my purpose and enjoy those moments that make me feel fulfilled, and live a life that I can be grateful of, that has no regrets and no moments that I sacrificed for something that I never really wanted. So with that being said, after a long video, I hope this is some good food for thought and kind of leads some direction for many of you. And if you're young, take your time, You don't need to have an answer just yet. You just need to experience and explore. If you're 13, 14, explore more than what's just in front of you and really learn the art of being true to yourself rather than falling in line with society tells you, what friends tell you, what teachers tell you should be, what your don't ignore your parents, but just be reflective on what your parents tell you and analyze things. Learn from them and make a decision. If you're old, look back. If you're 25, 30, 40, 50, look back at the time where you've been working. Look back at the time where you've stayed away from your passions and think about how you felt, and then look at how you feel when you are on your passions. If you can't make the jump right now to go towards your passions and just throw it up and be like, hey, you know what, I'm going to travel across the world, go to a place that I can pursue my passion and just live off of the earning off of that, and I have some money to kind of make the jump. If you're not in that place, and I'm obviously saying if you do have that money, don't just do that right away. Be calculated, be smart, don't be rash. Really think about it, really reflect. And then if you don't have the resources to do that, then obviously take your time to do it. But start to analyze and be introspective and think about how you feel when you go down the path of doing what is true to you versus going down the path of being, I would say, greedy and being told what you need to do and falling in line with what society tells you want. And realize that there's a distinction between it. And then take all of that, take all that I've told you, take all that you've looked inside of, and really find an answer to your life, to the meaning of life, and answer the question for yourself, the subjective answer. Find it and answer the question of what is the meaning of life? What is the meaning of your life? And with that being said, have a great evening. Happy Saturday.